We're going to do everything we can to get us off those bad lists and on top of those good lists. But don't worry, we're not changing either the food or the ducks. We've got the best of both in the entire world. Next time you come to Louisiana, come down here to hunt. Come down here, we'll feed you well, we'll send you home with a great trophy, but if you're not careful, you might end up staying. It's a great place to do business, it's a great place to call home. By the way, it's such a great place, we're not bitter at all down in Sportsman's Paradise. Now, as Chris has mentioned, we won a great victory with this piece of legislation. Most of the time, when you pass a good bill, you celebrate. But I think I can speak for many of us when I say this bill, having to pass this bill, didn't make me want to celebrate. How in the world did we get to the point where we had to pass a law to reinforce a constitutional right? It reminds me of how much work we've got to do to protect our rights. You know, in Louisiana, we're fond of saying after the storms that things are going to be different in Louisiana. Well, when you consider what happened in the days that followed Katrina, I sure hope that our state is different forever. You saw a piece of that in that video. Now, make no mistake about this. Wayne said this down in Louisiana, and it struck me hard. He said this was the first time in our nation's history that the government, through the use of force, took weapons, took guns from its own law-abiding citizens. For the first time, our own government shelved the Constitution in front of our very own eyes. Law-abiding citizens who were perhaps under the greatest threat for their safety that they will ever know were rendered defenseless. Not by criminals, but by misguided agents of a government out of control. Now, while the television pictures were gripping, you really had to be there to understand what was happening on the ground with the chaos and the terror. Just hours of enduring a near-death experience, seeing their great city, their homes, their businesses flooded, these survivors were left to fight off roaming bands of looters and criminals. Literally, signs went up saying, if you loot, we'll shoot. Authorities were saying they didn't have control of entire city blocks. Can you imagine the thoughts of a senior citizen like Patty, who we saw in that video, who looked out of her window and saw the police coming? Can you imagine her emotion? She thought she'd been stranded by herself. She probably thought, finally, help is arriving. They're coming to check on me. She had to have thought, finally, the cavalry is here. But then they banged on her door. And then they used physical force, wrestling her to the ground to take the weapon that she kept for protection. Can you imagine that betrayal after she'd survived Katrina, she'd survived the criminals, survived the looters, to be made a victim by her own government? And it wasn't an isolated case. It wasn't just one Patty. 1,000 guns were confiscated from law-abiding citizens. It wasn't just the rich people, it wasn't just the poor people, it wasn't the people of just one race. That's the way freedom works. That's why we cherish it so much. Freedom protects all of us equally, and when it is taken away, we're all equally threatened. Now, as you might have guessed, I spent those days and nights, the hours right after the storm in Louisiana trying to get my people the food, the water, the medicine they so desperately needed. And we clearly worked faster than FEMA and the state, that's for sure. You know, I just want to tell you a couple of the stories to give you a sense. So many people that I meet can't believe this really happened. And I want to thank the NRA for documenting it so people can see what really happened. I remember literally hours after the storm showing up in a sheriff's office. Never seen him so mad. He was yelling in his phone. He was telling somebody, I'm the sheriff, and if you don't like it, you can come arrest me. I said, Sheriff, what's gotten you so mad? He said, Bob, you won't believe it. The waters had gotten so high, people were stuck on their roofs. And he had gotten on the radio and said, we need help. We don't have enough deputies, we don't have enough boats. He asked for volunteers to come all over to come help him. We live in a great country. We live in a great state. Volunteers showed up by the dozens and the hundreds. Fishermen, recreational boaters, sheriff's deputies, people from all over showed up with their boats to go and rescue people. And he told them, you go out there to the interstate, you could literally go to one of the exit ramps. You could go out to Clearview and launch your boat in the waters. The water was that high, and you could go rescue people. But then all of a sudden, some bureaucrat showed up. Said, if you don't have the right pieces of paper, if you don't have proof of insurance or registration, you're not allowed to go in the water. People are dying, and they're worried about paperwork. I don't know about you, but if I was drowning, I really don't care if they stole the boat. I hope they come get me. The sheriff is so mad, he's yelling at his phone saying, I'm the sheriff, tell them if they don't like it, they can come arrest me. I said, well, Sheriff, I agree with you, that's the right thing. Before I know it, the sheriff's yelling on the phone, I've got Congressman Bobby Jindal here, you can come arrest us both. I said, Sheriff, who are you talking to? And he said, it's just the radio stations, don't worry about it.